Hi, welcome back to Grains in Small Places, and today I'm super excited to share with you my fresh milled flour dinner rolls made in the Bosch Universal Pro. Now this is the black and stainless steel. They also have it in white, but we're going to be using this today together to make our dinner rolls, and they are super soft and squishy and delicious. Perfect for Thanksgiving, but also perfect all year round. So let's get started. Okay, so to make these beautiful dinner rolls, this recipe is in my cookbook on page 12. So these are the yeast dinner rolls, perfect for Thanksgiving or everyday dinners or anything like that. I'll share with you a little bit later how you can turn these into sourdough if you prefer to use sourdough over yeast. I do have a little small sourdough section in my cookbook as well, so I wanted to share that with you. But let's go ahead and get started on weighing out the wheat berries. Okay, so if you don't have my cookbook, don't worry. You can also grab this recipe for free on my website at grainsandsmallplaces.net. I'll also make sure to put a link to that recipe in the description box below. But in this recipe, I have just hard white wheat written. So you can use all hard white wheat or you can use all hard red wheat. But I really like to add just a little bit of kamut. If you've been following me for a while, you know I like to throw that into like all of my breads and doughs and pizza doughs and stuff like that. If you don't have kamut, don't worry. Again, you can just use all of the hard wheat, or you can throw in a little spelt or even a little bit of einkorn, but really all hard white wheat works just great. So I like to weigh out my wheat berries. When I weigh out my wheat berries, that's going to give me that same amount of weight of flour. So this recipe calls for 420 grams. Now, the amount of flour can vary depending on your climate. So right now, we're in Florida. Sometimes I do have to increase my flour just a little bit on those days that it is rainy or humid or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and grab probably about 380 grams of my hard white. Okay. And then I'm going to finish that off with some kamut. This is sometimes also called Khorasan wheat. And I'll make sure to put a link to everything you see me using, my mixer, my mill, these little grain bins, all of that in the description box below. I get questions about that often, so that's where you can find those. Okay, 427 grams, we'll take that because again, I'm in Florida. I may even have to add a little bit of flour to this. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this on over to my mill. And right now I'm using the brand new Impact Mill from Nutrimill. As you can see, it's sitting right next to my Nutrimill Harvest, which you see me using in all my other videos. But this new Impact Mill I have really been loving. I do have a coupon code that I can share with you. That coupon code is grainy. That'll save you $20 off anything in the Nutrimill or Bosch store. And right now they're having a Black Friday sale that goes from the 11th of November to the 2nd of December. So anything that's on sale, you can also stack my $20 coupon code on top of that. So that's pretty fantastic. I'll make sure to put a link in the description box below. Okay, and here is our beautiful freshly milled flour. I have been extremely happy with the quality of flour from this new mill. Let me see if you can see here. It's so nice and powdery, and it mills nice and cool. So the flour is only warm to the touch, saving all of my precious nutrients. Okay, I really like to grab a stick of butter out before I'm going to start any of these recipes. That way I can have the butter start to soften, because I like to use the butter in the recipe, but also I like to use it to coat my pan to keep things from sticking. So if I grab that out in the very beginning, then I know that it'll be nice and soft and ready to go when it comes time to shaping and buttering my pans, and then also for my recipe. Okay, so the next exciting thing is I'm going to be making this in my new Bosch Universal Pro mixer. So this is the first recipe that I've done on camera with my new Bosch. So I'm really excited to show you how this works. I have used this one other time and it made beautiful dough. So let's go ahead and get started on the recipe. I'm going to be making just a single batch of my rolls, so you can see that this baby can do small batches, because I know that you've probably already seen everybody doing the maximum amount of batches, but sometimes we all just want to make one batch and we want to make sure that it mixes the dough perfectly, even only with just one small batch. That was one of the questions that you had for me in the comments of my unboxing video, so I wanted to make sure that we can get that addressed right here today. Okay, so we have about 240 grams of water. I'm just gonna warm this up. You just want warm water here. You're not looking for it to be hot or scalded or boiling or anything like that. Okay, so this is our water. I just warmed it up for like 30 seconds in the microwave. It is not too hot for me to hold my finger in. Pouring that in, and then we're going to add about 72 grams, or a third a cup, of brown sugar. In the recipe, I do have both volume and weight, so you can choose which way you want to make the recipe. I generally like to go by weight just because it seems to be a little bit more accurate and there's less mistakes, because everybody can scoop 1 cup or a third a cup a little bit differently, but by weight, a gram is a gram. So that is helpful, especially if you're learning. And then this, we're just going to do about a half a stick of that softened butter. And if you would like to use oil instead of butter, you can certainly do that. And then for the brown sugar, if you prefer, instead of using brown sugar, you could use sucanat, you could use maple sugar, you could use maple syrup, you could use honey, any sweetener of choice. It's pretty much a 1-to-1. If it's any other kind of different sweetener, you may have to look that up for the change out rate, but for the ones I mentioned, it's all just 1-to-1. And then we're going to use a teaspoon of salt, and this is that salt that I have really been loving. This Baja Gold salt, it's a mineral sea salt that's not processed. And I do have a little coupon code for you where you could save 10% off your order with them. I'll put that in a link in the description box below as well. And you want 2 room temperature eggs. So when you pull that butter out, you can also set these out on your counter. If you forget, you can always just set them in a little warm bowl of water while you're waiting, which is what I ended up doing. So we're gonna go ahead and just do the 2 eggs right in here. If you prefer, you can obviously crack these into a separate container and give them a little mix to prevent shells from getting in here and making sure you don't get a bad egg. I guess I probably should have done that. Just gave my hands a little wash. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and put the lid on this and then give that a little mix and see how that goes. I'm just using the M for the manual for now. Okay, I'm glad I did put the lid on because it is pretty powerful up there, actually. Okay, that is one feature I need to get used to, but it is nice because now that I've got a little bit of stuff, I thought this was going to be really messy to take this lid off, but they have been pretty smart in making this smaller lid here. The smaller lid doesn't have any splashes or anything on it, just around the edge here. But now that we have that all incorporated pretty well, I'm going to go ahead and add in our freshly milled flour. So I'm just going to dump this right on top. Just slide that in. And then place the top on. Let me rinse my hands off real quick. Okay, so again, I'm just going to go with the manual mode to get these all mixed together. Okay, I was making sure I had all the dry flour off from below on the bottom of the little center post here. So it looks like all of my flour has been incorporated. So now's the time that I'm going to let this sit and autolyze. I'm going to go ahead and place this here to remind myself that I have not put in the yeast yet. So I use instant yeast after this autolyze step where we're allowing all of this to soak together. Then that is when I'm going to put in my yeast. If you're using active dry yeast, you're going to want to save a little bit of liquid from the recipe and then mix that with your yeast and just a pinch of that sugar. And then during this time, you'll let that bloom. And while that's blooming and activating, it should get nice and foamy. And then when we come back to put our yeast in, that's when you'll pour that mixture in. So that's how you do that with active dry yeast. But the reason we're letting this sit is to let the bran start to soften, let that fresh milled flour start soaking up the moisture, because it does take longer than just regular traditional white flour. So we'll be back. I'm going to give this about 15 minutes, which is what I normally do with all of my recipes. And then we'll put in the yeast and start the kneading process. So we'll be back. So you see me using here the regular black Universal Plus mixer. This is what comes with the mixer. And then there's also some whisks. But if you're interested in also being able to make like cookies and cakes and all of those things, they have some amazing bundle deals right now. You can get the Bakers bundle, which includes your cookie paddles and your cake beaters and some fun things. And then they also have a different one if you're more interested in like just sourdough. They have a sourdough bundle with this mixer. And then they also have, like, if you want just all the bells and whistles, they have the ultimate bundle that has all kinds of things like the ice cream maker, the blender attachment that goes on the drive up here, the juicer, it includes also the baker's kit and slicer. So it's just all kinds of things that you can get with that bundle. You can also get those same bundles with the white Bosch mixer if you're interested in the white one as opposed to this black one. And then what's even more exciting is you can also use those bundle deals with the smaller Nutrimil Artiste mixer, which is also on sale on their website. And again, you can save $20 extra off of those already low sale prices using my coupon code grainy. So I mentioned earlier that if you're interested in making this recipe with sourdough, all you would need to do is take the yeast out, use about a half a cup or 115 grams of an active sourdough discard. So make sure that it's, been doubling and ready to go to raise the dough. So if it's been in your fridge for a while, make sure you get it out, feed it a couple times, then it'll be ready to go. And then you're gonna put that in here. Your rise times will probably be close to double. I usually say between 3 and 6 hours for the first rise and between 2 and 4 hours for the second rise. You just kind of have to watch. Everyone's sourdough is a little bit different. If you're used to working with yours, you're probably already gonna know about what your rise times are. And then just continue the recipe on like normal. Okay, it's been about 15 minutes, so this is reminding me we need to put that yeast in. I'm gonna take that off. Nice and absorbed. Okay, I'm gonna add 1. Okay, 2.5 teaspoons of yeast. This is my little half teaspoon measuring spoon because my full one is dirty. All right, I'm gonna give that a little spin with the manual button. Okay, so what I'm gonna go ahead and do is put this on number 1. You never wanna knead your bread on a high number, so make sure to keep it on the low speed, maybe to the 2, but I'm just gonna knead this at number 1. I'm gonna set my timer for 5 minutes, and I'm gonna come back and check this because I know from experience with the Artiste, this Bosch style mixer kneads pretty quickly, so I don't wanna over knead my dough, so we're gonna check it on the lowest speed in 5 minutes. Okay, we're at the 5-minute mark. So I can tell that it's not ready. I still have a whole bunch down on the sides here. So in the past, everybody has told me that means that this mixer needs a little bit more flour. So my anchor stone that I'm usually using really likes a wet dough. So I'm gonna go ahead and add just a teeny bit more flour. I have just like a tablespoon of flour here. This is what I feed my sourdough starter with. It's just some hard white wheat. I need to mill some more. I keep it in my refrigerator. So that wasn't a whole lot. Okay, so I am getting some stretch with the dough. So that's definitely good, and it's starting to want to stick to itself, so I really think that we're awfully close. I'm going to go ahead and continue to knead this. I'm guessing it seems between 6 and 8 minutes is like the most common amount of time needed to knead in the Bosch mixer. So I'm going to go ahead and set my timer for another minute. I don't want to just go ahead and set 3 minutes because I may over knead this dough. This is a very soft and tender dough. So we're going to go for another minute just on the slow speed. Okay, we are at the 7-minute mark. I think what I want to go ahead and do is just scrape down my sides because I have a lot of dry flour up here. Okay, I went ahead and milled just a little bit more flour. I didn't have quite enough. I'm gonna do about 2 tablespoons or so of it, because I just didn't have enough of the already milled flour. So let's go ahead and let this go for, let me just mix this in really quick. Okay, and then I'm gonna go ahead and put this on knead for another minute, and then we'll check back. Okay, so after that 8 minutes, I went ahead and turned the speed up to 2. So it's probably been about 10, 11 minutes of kneading. But again, I did add more flour in that, which definitely slows that down. But I can see that we've got a nice, beautiful, stretchy dough. So I'm super happy with the gluten development here, and adding extra flour does make that a little bit slower process, but as you can see, it does rip a little bit. So adding that extra flour definitely would add time on any mixer. So I'm very happy with the results. This did knead faster than my Ank. So the great thing about this mixer is it kneads the dough up super quickly. So usually in 8 minutes, from what I'm seeing online. Also, the batch that I made the other day happened at about 8 minutes. This one took a little longer because, again, I had to add some more flour, which is normal because that flour didn't get kneaded that full amount of time. So the thing that makes this mixer amazing is also the thing I think a couple people have been struggling with, is that it kneads so quickly. They're kneading for like a half an hour because that's what it takes the KitchenAid, or 20 minutes like what I normally use for the Ank, and then so they just set the timer, walk away, and don't realize that it becomes over kneaded. So I think that knowing what mixer that you have is a very useful information in knowing how long that you need to knead the dough for. So I wanted to go over one thing. While checking for a window pane, you definitely want to be gentle and delicate about it. So you can see I have this stretched gently, but if I were to grab this and kind of yank it apart, I can still break it. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware when you're checking for nice stretchy dough that you still want to be gentle and delicate with the dough. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and get my hands rinsed up a little bit. This is a wet and sticky dough. It's supposed to be that way. That's what gives you your nice, soft, squishy rolls when they're all done being baked. So let me wash my hands real quick. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and cover this and let it rise right here in the bowl for about an hour, depending on your home. It can take somewhere between 1 to 2 hours, 2 hours if it's very cold in your kitchen, but I usually end up getting results within about an hour or so. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this to the side. I'll be back after that's done rising. We're looking for about double. So I wanted to make a note. You can double this recipe, but I will say I wouldn't recommend doubling the yeast fully. So if you're gonna double this recipe, I would use about 3 teaspoons or 1 tablespoon of yeast, as opposed to doubling that fully, because it tends to overproof pretty quickly otherwise. Pretty much the same goes with most of my recipes. If you're going to double that recipe, just add a little extra yeast, but not completely double that yeast, because I'm finding that they do overproof really quickly and it's hard to catch that perfect doubling moment. And so then you get overproof dough. So just increase the yeast by a little bit anytime you're doubling my recipes. Okay, I'm gonna share with you one of my secrets. So I love to make these rolls the day before. This helps being able to have fresh milled flour products on my table every day if I want to, or like for the instance of Thanksgiving, you're super busy Thanksgiving getting everything ready, so it's very helpful to make the dough ahead of time and bake the day that you want to eat it. This also enhances the flavor. So what I like to do is make the dough, let it do its first rise, shape it. After you shape it, cover it and put it in your refrigerator right away. Don't let it do the second rise. You're going to put it in the refrigerator overnight. Now, I have had these in my fridge for 2 up to 3 days and they've still been successful. I would recommend 1 to 2 days max, but at 3 days they work. They're just not quite as fluffy. You can also freeze them at this point if you want to put them in your freezer and make them, a week ahead of time. And then from the freezer, you need to put them in the refrigerator overnight to thaw the night before. Then you're going to take them from the refrigerator, whether you've frozen them or not, because now they're thawed, and you're going to put them on your counter. Let them come to room temperature. That generally takes between 1 and 2 hours, and then bake them as directed. And that way you can have nice fresh rolls without doing all the work that day. So what my favorite thing is to do is double the recipe, and I will either make a loaf of bread, because I'll make a loaf of bread out of my roll dough or any of my bread doughs. I kind of mix and match. I'll make rolls, bread, buns, whatever meal plans we have coming up. And I will take that and double it. And then I will make one for the day I want to use it. And then I'll put another batch, whether it be rolls, bread, buns, any of those things, put it in my fridge cupboard, and then I can bake them 1 or 2 days later. And that's how I like to keep things freshly baked every day so that you can plan around your meal plans. Okay, so here is the dough and it has doubled. Beautiful. Let me take the lid off all the way so you can see a little better. So what I'm going to do is get some butter on my work surface and get my pan. I really have been loving this stainless steel pan that has this lid with it, so that it already comes with a cover. And I love to use the rest of that, not the rest of, but some of that softened butter to butter my pan. You can also use parchment paper if you prefer, or you could spray this with oil, whichever method you prefer to keep it non-stick. But I love the larger sides here, because this is the perfect pan to keep the rolls in the refrigerator overnight for the next day. Now today we're going to go ahead and bake these today so that we can have them for dinner tonight. I'm going to go ahead and just butter up the edges as well. Okay, I'm going to set this to the side. I'm going to put a little bit of butter on my dough hook here. This makes about 12 rolls. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of butter on my work surface, because I'm going to use that for shaping. This is where it gets interesting. Some people prefer to use oil instead of butter. We've been trying to decrease the amount of oil, so you could use lard, tallow, or anything like that, but whatever your family's comfortable with. If you want to use some olive oil, I shaped with olive oil for years. It's actually a little bit easier. It makes the dough come together beautifully, and that is especially if you're just beginning and learning how to do shaping, that olive oil really does a nice job. All right, so I'm just gonna wipe the butter around so I have this on my work surface. Alrighty, and I'm just gonna kind of deflate this a little bit. Okay, and then just kind of bring all the dough together to make a lovely little dough ball. Look how beautiful this dough is. Okay, again, it is a wet, sticky dough, so make sure that you are using some kind of fat here. That really helps. I'm just going to divide this into 12 equal parts. If you want to make sure for sure that they're equal, you can always weigh them. Just try to do my best guess, I guess. Obviously, I can see already that I'm going to have to steal some dough from some of the larger pieces and put it on the smaller pieces, which I have no problem with that. So I basically divide my dough evenly into 4 equal parts, and then take those 4 equal parts and divide those into thirds, giving me 4 times 3 equals 12. So then I kind of consolidate here, and I see I've got some little pieces and I've got some big pieces, so I'm just going to steal a little bit of dough from those larger ones. Not too bad here. Okay. Just make sure I put a little bit more butter or oil on my hands while I'm shaping. So you can shape rolls a lot of different ways. You can deflate all of the air, and you can pull all of the dough towards the center and just keep shaping them like that. So you have a beautiful little round ball. You just want to make sure that you have some tension on the top of this roll. That helps them to rise up and become nice and puffy rolls. So another way that people can do it, which is one of my favorite ways to do it, is I just kind of, it's very similar, but I'll pull all of the ends on the bottom here, which is similar to what we did here. And then I'll take my fingers and kind of push the dough up through, kind of squeezing it and pinching it, and that makes a really nice tight top. So that's kind of one of my favorite ways to shape them. If your dough is really, really sticky and hard to work with, I do have a little short video on how to work with that that's even stickier than what we have here. Your dough scraper is definitely your friend. So you can kind of consolidate the dough the best that you can and use a little sweeping motion. And as you come around, your workspace will probably be larger than mine. You just pull the dough against the scraper and the table at the same time, and if you can see, that is creating some beautiful surface tension on the top. So if it's dough so wet that you can't even work with it with your hands without it just making a giant mess, that's another method. So choose whichever you prefer. I really like shaping with the butter when I can, because of course we're making dinner rolls here, and what's a little extra butter just adds to the delicious flavor. And then another way that people will shape is to get all of your dough consolidated into a roll, and then kind of do one of these little push with your pinky and push with your thumb, which is essentially doing very similar work to what your dough scraper is doing, because it's putting that tension on the top. So as you can see, these all look pretty similar. Well, maybe you can't see. I'll show you at the end. As you can see, they all look pretty similar when I show you here. So it doesn't matter which way you choose to do your surface tension, but you want to make sure that you don't just take this and roll it into a ball like that and put it in there, because this is going to not give you that nice puffy, beautiful little roll. So you definitely want to have that tension on the top. And I like to keep this extra butter here in case I need that, which I almost always do. But this is very nice dough to be working with right now. And I can tell it's going to make nice, fluffy little rolls. I'll even push these all the way up to the point where it almost seems like this dough is going to break off, and then just consolidate it in with that roll. Okay. And then I like to use my little scraper to clean all the excess butter off of my workstation. Okay, so here you can see each one of these was shaped just a little bit different, but they all have a nice surface tension on the top. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and put my top on, and then we're gonna let these rise for about 35 to 45 minutes until they look nice and puffy, and then we will go ahead and bake them, and I'll let you see what they look like when they're done. You're gonna bake these at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 20 to 25 minutes. If you want that signature really shiny golden brown on the top of the rolls, you can brush these with an egg wash. It's not required. You don't have to do it, but it does give that really shiny brown finish. And then when these come out of the oven, they taste even more delicious if you brush the top of the rolls with just a little bit of butter while they're still warm. This is probably the smallest batch of dough that I would want to make with this, which was about 420 or so grams of flour. That makes a nice loaf or 2 small loaves, so that's pretty much the minimum any of my recipes would call for. But I would say if I were to half this, I would recommend a smaller mixer if you're only wanting to make 1 tiny loaf of bread. But I feel like we could make multiple different loaves of bread to save ourselves time in the kitchen, especially with my little trick. But wow, am I impressed with how quickly this kneaded up this fresh milled flour dough and how seamless it worked with the new impact mill. I have a feeling it will work beautifully with my harvest grain mill as well. I'm just so happy and pleased. Okay, so these have been rising for about 45 minutes. You can see they're nice and puffy. And if I do the little poke test here, they don't spring back quickly. They just come back very slowly. So we're gonna go ahead and put these on in the oven. If they spring back really quickly, then that tells me they still need to rise. And if I push it and it stays indented for a long time, or comes back really slow or deflates, then I know that I overproofed them. But never fear, if you overproof them, go ahead and reconsolidate the whole dough, shape them and let them rise again, and then you can bake them. Okay, they are done and they are beautiful. And I'm just gonna brush a little bit or rub a little bit of salted butter on the top of these. What a perfect Thanksgiving dinner roll recipe. Can't wait to dig in. I'm just gonna let these cool just for a little bit and then we can go ahead and enjoy them. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Well, we got to use this amazing Bosch mixer for our fresh milled flour dinner rolls. This made the most beautiful dough in the quickest amount of time. I was shocked. So you can bet if I have a dough that I need to make quickly, this is the mixer that I'm going to be grabbing for. I'm really impressed with the quality, and I can tell that this mixer is going to last a very long time. I'm just so grateful that Nutrimil gave me the opportunity to be able to use this mixer because it's unlike any mixer that I've ever used before. So I hope this video was helpful to you. Don't forget, you can save $20 off your mixer with my coupon code grainy. And right now through December 2nd, they're still doing their Black Friday sale. So try to grab that. I'll put a link in the description box below. I'll also make sure to put a link in the description box below where you can grab my recipes on my blog at grainsandsmallplaces.net or my new cookbook. So until next time, thanks for stopping by Grains and Small Places. Goodbye.